future rests on our tradition. It's been the same since we began. Each day in life we're on a mission to resurrect our greatness once again. In this we find purpose. Everything in life truly has its purpose. The wisdom of creation is in its purpose. Every day we live, we will be on purpose. Live this and grow wise. Oh yeah. Every day now. Everything in life has to have its purpose. The meaning of creation is in its purpose. Every day we live, we must be on purpose. Live this and grow wise.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the All African People's Revolutionary Party Weekly Pan-African News. My name is Monica, and I'm with my comrade Onyesa Wu. And later on, we have a really amazing guest that will be interviewed, Tony Ndege. And what we do before we start the show, we do three things. One is we talk about who we are. So who the All African People's Revolutionary Party is we're a socialist party fighting for the liberation of our people. It was founded by Kwame Nkrumah in 1968. And we are all over Africa as well as this country, unifying our people. And the second thing that we do is we bring in ancestors. And today we are going to bring in two ancestors. One of them is Queen Mother Moore. And I just learned so much about Queen Mother Moore. Queen Mother Moore was born in July 1898 and was a civil rights activist in Harlem and studied teachings under Frederick Douglass as well as Marcus Garvey. And that's where she was able to learn more about Pan-Africanism as well as being a Black nationalist leader. She served as a leader of the Universal Negro Improvement Association, which is underneath one of Garvey's organizations. She was fired, y'all. So Garvey went to speak in Louisiana and New Orleans and was arrested, and the people weren't having it. They uprised and they had to release him the next day. And I want to just share a quote that she said. She said, I had two guns, one in my bosom and one in my pocketbook. Everyone was told and everyone knew that they had to come armed. We wanted that freedom. Standing up, so uprising, standing up for our people, that's the type of energy we're bringing into the revolution, the energy we're bringing to our people. So excited to continue to elevate and bring her in this space. She also founded several organizations focused on self-determination of our people, reparations, land back, as well as stopping of genocide of our people that was happening here as well as in Africa and all over. Even in 1967, she petitioned the United Snakes for over $200 billion to be given to our people for the compensation of the enslavement of our ancestors. And it was going to be supporting for our Africans who wanted to return home back to our motherland in Africa, as well as those who wanted to remain here. She also became the president of the Universal Association of Ethiopian Women. And what she wanted to do was really tie our people from here to Africa. She had a very, very Pan-African view and was engaged in women all over globally about elevating Pan-Africanism. She also took many trips to Africa, and in 1972, that's where she was gifted the name Queen Mother by the Ashanti people in Ghana. And she passed away May 2nd at the age of 98. And this is why we are bringing her in. I've learned so much from her, the essence of her, the leadership and everything that she has done for the revolution. We bring her in and we celebrate Queen Mother Moore. We just thank you for all the work that you did, and we continue the fight that you did. We're also bringing in Karl Marx. Typically, we bring in mostly African ancestors, but we're bringing in Karl Marx, who was born May 5th. And we're bringing in Karl Marx because he was also not just an author and a philosopher, but he was a socialist revolutionary. So you already know we're revolutionaries. We connect to revolutionary philosophies and actualize them. So early in his life, he was a journalist, and he wrote radical writings. It was so radical because he would deconstruct capitalism and talk about how capitalism was going to destruct people and humanity, that he was expelled from Germany, France, and Belgium governments. So they did not want the truth to be told. He also was the co-author of the Communist Manifesto, which also really unpacked capitalism. In 1864, he founded the International Working Men's Association, again, continued the work of really learning about imperialism and capitalism. And his writings also highlighted the struggles of the working class, the struggles of the social class, the struggles of the people that were being oppressed by capitalism. Marx believed that it was like essential. It was essential and inevitable that a revolutionary would happen because the people would resist and topple capitalism, because the current system, as we know, is under the conditions is so detrimental to our society. And so when I reflect on learning about more about Queen Mother Moore, as well as Karl Marx, and bringing both of these ancestors in, they both really elevated and talked about the conditions, not just here, but globally. And the only way to stop the oppressors is through a revolution. So bringing in both those ancestors and thanking both of them for their work, that we continue. The next thing that we do is a land acknowledgement. And this land acknowledgement is more than acknowledgement, because we believe that we're in indigenous land, we're on stolen land. No matter how long that it's stolen, it needs to be returned. We're here in Tiwa territory, so-called Albuquerque, and we organize with our indigenous relatives for them to have their land back. And we also fight for our land back in Africa. And thank you so much for letting me share that introduction. And now I'm going to turn it over to my comrade, Onyesawu.
Thanks so much, Monica. I actually learned things about both Marx and Queen Mother Moore from all that research you did. Like, I didn't know Marx was banned from multiple countries. That's kind of lit. I just read this book written by Che Guevara, actually. That's like a biolog, he's talking about Marxist theory, but he's talking about like Marx's life, and it like really humanized him for me. So I've been enjoying learning more about him, certainly because of the writings that he did and the ideology he helped develop gave so much to the world. So super cool. Anywho, so Monica just did our intro. The next thing that we do every single show every single time is political education. You are not going to come to an APIP event anywhere in the entire world without getting hit with that political education. We are a propaganda party. We are trying to win our people to socialism and to revolutionary Pan-Africanism, and that requires educating our people about socialism and revolutionary Pan-Africanism, which we do through political education. It is consciousness raising. It is waking our people up. So today we have, for the PE segment, an interview with a really dope comrade who actually reached out after we did last week episodes. The comrade is Antonio Ndege with the Green Party in North Carolina. So last week, we did No Green New Deal under capitalism, and we mentioned how the Democratic Party stole the Green New Deal from the Green Party. Tony reached out and was like, I can talk a little bit more about that. And now he's on the show. So welcome, Tony. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for this opportunity, Monica Onyesonu. Thank you so much for allowing me to share the space with you and to talk about these important topics. And it's so important that you were talking about green imperialism and green capitalism as not being the solution. And I thought it was, there's been a lot of discussions, of course, since, Earth Day to May Day. We had lots of events within the Green Party. But, we've been having a lot of events, especially because of the pandemic, that have discussed imperialism online. So it's, I've been following y'all, and glad that you're talking about. It's just a wonderful thing to see this after kind of a lull, to see younger African, Black and brown folks talking about revolution, talking about Che Guevara. So, if you've been reading him, read the Revolutionary, well, it's really the Revolutionary Diaries, but episodes of the Cuban Revolution is one of the versions of it. But it's like more thrilling than a movie, and I rarely say that about a biographical book. But check that out if you're in the middle of reading that. Just to introduce myself real quick, I'm just going to say, what I'm doing now, and and how I got here a little bit. But I'm one of 7 national co-chairs of the Green Party. I'm not coming here to necessarily represent the Green Party. I'm going to talk about it, but I'm going to I like that you cut loose, and I want to have that, give myself the permission to talk as Tony Ndege. So, but I am co-chairs of one of the 7 co-chairs of the GPUS, Green Party US, and also co-chair of North Carolina. I'm also been an activist and organizer for 26 years, at least 25 years now. So it's been quite a while, since I was in high school, actually. And I'm also a local independent organizer for the movement for Black Lives locally here in my city. We've also been doing some study, our state Green Party with Socialist Party, several Socialist Party chapters, as well as other Green Party chapters. And just like all kinds of activists, actually, it's called leftunity.study.com. It may give you like a thing to not go further, but like just continue on. It's basically a Zoom link, because these have been Zoom discussions. So if you want to sign up for that, please check those out, and I'll talk about that at the end, or you can plug that at the end. So thank you so much. My journey here came through activism. As I said, in high school, I was fortunate to start reading, like Marx and Malcolm X, autobiography of Malcolm X, some of those, great works, and decided that I was a socialist, and actually met some revolutionary socialists that helped to further me along in my training. And a lot of people don't know, North Carolina, a lot of people from Chicago, New York might be like, North Carolina, actually this is one of the historical hotbeds of radicalism and resistance, especially for African and Black and brown folks. The Woolworth sit-ins that really took the civil rights era to another level. Robert F. Williams, prior to that, Negroes with Guns author. There was also a school, short-lived, but it was called Malcolm X Liberation University. So this has been a lot of the only very successful chapter of the Black Panther Party in the South. There were several, in fact, several in North Carolina, but the only one that lasted several years was in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. There was some good work in New Orleans. And so what this means is that there's a radical tradition here. So I'm glad to represent Carolina, even though I'm from Maryland and DC and Africa and Uganda. I went to, I've been to Cuba, was active in labor issues, support from EMEA, and later on as a college organizer, I was a really strong anti-war activist. And that's kind of like for a while, I dropped out of activism because I was so disheartened to see a lot of the anti-war movement dismantled from the inside by folks who were foolishly thought that we were gonna like elect Kerry and everything was gonna be all right and the war, that's how we're gonna end the war. Not everyone explicitly said it, but it was said in action. And that got me disillusioned. So it's very important that we have this discussion about the Democratic Party and why we need to break free. I call it Democratic Party plantation. So anyhow.
Agree. Also very fast. You mentioned at the beginning a book about Che Guevara that folks should read. Can you just say the title again?
I think it's called Episodes of the Cuban Revolution. It's been years since I've read it, but it is amazing. That's the Pathfinder version. There's another version. If you just look like Stephen Sondheim did a two-part movie, very long, but it's very educational. Especially the first part is a lot more. The second part is the Bolivian Diaries, which is more depressing because that's towards But but both of them are great. Both of those parts are almost like two different movies, really. But the book that it's based upon is even more amazing. So check that out. We're going to be reading that with Left Unity Study. So maybe I'll invite you to join us when we do. We're going to do Lenin next, State and Revolution probably. So I don't know. We'll see. But we're doing Rosa Luxemburg now. But I'll shut up.
So the book is Episodes of the Cuban Revolutionary War by Che Guevara, and then I'll pass it to
Yeah, you kind of started getting into it. And so can you elaborate more of why should African people leave the Democratic Party, also what you call the plantation?
Okay, well, I'll say why I joined the Green Party, and then I'll get into, and that will help to illuminate, because like y'all said, I was an activist, and I was also, from very early on, a socialist. So I really resented electoral politics, actually. And I thought Nader was of the candidates in 2000 the best, but I'd still kind of like, I saw how sometimes electoralism, this takes you away from like focusing on the right things sometimes, and you're like focusing on power a lot. But the fact is that we're so highly controlled here in the United States because of the political system, and really because it's based upon keeping two choices, fear-mongering against Black and brown people and indigenous people. There's no other reason why we don't have a more parliamentary or more parties. It's because they've been able to successfully keep that political theater and keep that white fear, and people are going to take my little property when like everyone else, the people at the top have it all, So I would say it started when I came back into activism. I joined Occupy, and we had the DNC protests in 2012. And it was very interesting because I also saw the Occupy movement being, I wouldn't say appropriated, but it was all already beginning, like people like kind of inching away from like the class origin of it, which is, came out of the Great Recession, where, and it started out with mostly white, but it was very interesting towards later 2012, when I actually went up there for the anniversary, it was at least half Black and brown up in New York, the people who were protesting. So, but it was less people. But I was like, the reason why is because the people who have, who a lot of people started getting jobs again. And then a lot of other people are just like, no, this still sucks. So it was, but there was something that I called the Obama freeze, and Obama was one of the most potent weapons ever deployed by this ruling class. I don't even know if he knew how potent. I think he does now. He does now, like stop the NBA strike and all kinds of stuff. But at the time, I don't think he knew. I don't think any of us. I kind of knew, and I was kind of worried. But what I was most disappointed in was not the people who saw this as an important milestone, but because I understand that, but the folks who call themselves radicals, the folks who've been through this and know the origins of the Democratic Party and know, went through all of the hijinks before, those folks, there's just a total freeze. And I was one of a few Black organizers involved in the DNC protests throughout the whole week. We had a big one and then we continued on. And I felt it was really isolating. And one thing that really helped me get through that was to hear Glenn Ford from Black Agenda Report on Democracy Now!, I believe, and it was a debate with Michael Eric Dyson, and he just tore him up. I mean, Michael Eric Dyson is one of those folks who like talk radical, but then they whip it back. They do that rope a dope and take it back to the plantation at the very end. I mean, he says something like, sometimes I'm like, that sounds pretty good. And then I'm like, oh, it's Michael Eric Dyson. No, he's just gonna take us back to the plantation. But Glenn Ford just was so comprehensively like addressed everything that he was saying about Obama. And I was like, wow, this is, so I started following them. I started following Bruce Dixon, who was the editor. And I really think that that's what brought me into the Green Party, Bruce Dixon, and the fact that the Greens allowed for that kind of Black radical space. Also, later on, Bruce Dixon brought me into the Stein campaign because he had some illnesses, and I helped to do a tour for North Carolina. But later on, of course, the Jamu Baraka was the 2016 nominee. So by that time, I joined the Green Party, but really it was because I had tried to escape electoralism, and I'm still not I don't believe that you can vote away capitalism. Like that's just not going to happen. But so I'm a revolutionary, but I do believe that to abandon the political space that the Democrats occupy and take all the time is very irresponsible for us, because we have to take that, that's one of the few times we can actually get our message out on the media outside of a mass movement happens, and with the Black Lives Matter movement, something happens, unfortunately someone gets killed, then they'll listen to me. But in general, we don't get our message out to or have the support to do that, except for a few arenas. And it's very important not to abandon that to the Democrats. So one last thing I'll say about the Democrats is that it's, you can't talk about the Democratic Party without talking about capitalism, right? So, and the Democratic Party right now, the U.S. Democratic Party, is the most powerful capitalist political organization in the world. I mean, so you have to think about that. Obama, Hillary, and Biden got more Wall Street donations. They got more, probably even military donations. Romney might have gotten more than Obama, but they knew he was going to lose anyhow. So they were just, using that for another reason. But we have to follow the money and hold people accountable to what they've done. There's more than enough reasons to know that the Democratic Party is actually our enemy. It's our class enemy in terms of the people who own it, not the people we're the society's so controlled that we're just given this Coke or Pepsi bullshit, and we're everything, the whole political apparatus is so owned by the corporations, the media, everything. I'm preaching to the choir, but there's just so few. You can't even hear the other options, so people just don't think there's another option, right? But I've rarely gone to, whenever I worked for the polls for the Greens and spoken to a working class person, especially Black and brown folks, who were just really gung ho about the Democrats and what they have to offer, right? So the things we have to understand is that capitalism, the dangers of capitalism outside of, and I guess is a segue to the next thing, aside from ecological collapse and nuclear war and annihilation from that, one thing is that capitalism is extremely flexible. So it can appropriate our struggles, right? And it can adapt to new social conditions that have to adapt to our struggles. And so therefore it can actually stunt revolution. It can actually break radical continuity if we are not moving with the water. Like, you always have to be moving. That's one thing. If you want to talk about Marx, the most important thing that he taught us was dialectics, or he discovered, really. It was just an observation. It's not like he discovered it like Christopher Columbus discovered. It's an observation that he articulated, I think, the most scientifically, because he was obsessed with it and studied history obsessively. And that's what, so basically, if you are not moving with the waters of change, you're going to sink. It doesn't matter how far ahead you were 20 years ago. And the Democratic Party is the biggest anchor. It has, there's a really good meme that has graveyard of social movements, and it has a graveyard, and at the time it was made during Black Lives Matter, right? And so it's Black Lives Matter next, and here we go. Ford Foundation grants, this kind of I'm down with people who say Black girl magic, but it's kind of really, lame corporate Black girl magic kind of politics, kind of corporatist kind of identity politics, not, rooted in liberation. And now we see the CIA using it and going HBCUs. I'm sure you've talked about that. And the other thing I'd have to say is the capitalist, the ruling class, right, are generally more class conscious than we are right now. That will change at some point, and that's something you have to understand. They know the difference between a social democrat and a revolutionary. They know who they can play. They know the difference better than we do. They know the difference, unfortunately, better than a lot of radicals do. And so if you're ever trying to accomplish anything on a revolutionary level, or even a Green New Deal, something comprehensive, like a big sweeping change, you cannot do that without a mass movement. However, we can't create a mass movement, but we can miss critical opportunities if we are not organized and independently. We can miss extremely critical opportunities along the way to move society forward and our people forward to a mass struggle. So we got to leave the plantation. Andrew Jackson, the anti-federalist slave owners were the originators of the Democratic Party. All that Manifest Destiny stuff, Indian Removal Act, genocidal atrocities. So the origin, that's why I say it's literally the plantation origin. Even Woodrow Wilson, who made the Democrats popular again, was one of the most, since Jackson, probably the most racist. People say Trump's the worst. Look at Woodrow Wilson. He is one of the most white supremacist leaders ever. And, he led the first Red Scare, which was, amazingly detrimental to working class movements. And, he was a segregationist. The CIA was established under Truman. JFK began a further incursion to Africa, and, the assassination of Lumumba. So it's JFK was hardly friends to Black folks, right? And so that's why, why we're not building upon the successes of the civil rights era in terms of exploitation is because, in some ways, many ways, we've been pushed back organizationally. It's because our organization has been taken away from us, because before we couldn't be a part of the plantation, and now they got enough of us like thinking that we can get stuff done. And I think all of we have enough material evidence to show that's never going to happen. And also, people have been trying to reform both the Republicans. Remember, the Republicans were the more progressive back in the late 1800s. Both the Republicans and the Democrats for like now over 125 years, and it's not worked. So we got to do something different. That's all this really is. It's not like I disagree with a lot of Greens disagree on a lot of things, but you got to have people sitting down at the table who want certain things, like, and so that's why I joined the Green Party, because it's very anti-war, so that's great. Pretty good on anti-imperialism, certainly Cuba, Venezuela. I think we need to focus more on AFRICOM, and I think it's wonderful that Ajamu, came forward through that. And it was just, great that we have the political space. We had, like a talk with Berta Cáceres, with the author of Who Killed Berta Cáceres, last month. We had like 20 organizations, African organizations. I don't know if your organization was there. It might have been, but it was people from Missouri. And so we had almost 200 people for that Zoom, and probably thousands of people who've seen it. So it's really important to open up that space. All right, I hope I didn't talk too much.
No, thank you for that receipts history lesson, and it just reminds us of like why this work is critical. You elevating, look how long reform work's been happening in both parties, and all it's gotten us is more destruction, more destruction of people, of life, stolen resources, stolen land, stolen people. It hasn't ended. So thank you for that.
I
And
appreciate
if we
it.
think
People point out that we've been trying to fix this for 100 years, and we're not any closer. And we have like this extremely long track record of the Democratic Party in particular, like co-opting and de-radicalizing and demobilizing our movements. You actually look at the history, if you look at the receipts, there is no basis to think that this strategy is going to be successful. I'm pointing that out.
And the latest example is the Minneapolis uprising, right? Minnesota is Democrat controlled right now. It goes back and forth, but it has a lot of, and Minneapolis is one of the most quote unquote progressive cities. It's totally Democrat controlled, and we actually have one Green city council member there, totally Democratic controlled. And then like the audacity, or just it's just amazing that we would have like our movement, like people, they would come in, swoop into the movement. There's billions of dollars being put into like making sure that Biden, who would save capitalism. I mean, that's the Wall Street class wanted them to come in and undo some of the rogue things that Trump did. Really, they don't really care as much about how racist Trump was, but he was an embarrassment. It was an embarrassment to him. He was an embarrassment to them, right? He was too, he took the sheets off. They all won. So they have put all this money into like bringing Biden back so he can like save us from this current crisis, or save them really. And but then you have like us protesting in solidarity with the Minneapolis uprising, and then you hear people talk about, well, how we fix this is go and vote. And I'm like, vote for who? Like, because in my town, our Democrats are far right of the Democrats in Minneapolis. I mean, they look like Che Guevara next to some of the Democrats here in North Carolina, because the Republicans so it's like it's just when it's not based on materialism, right? So we need to take people back to like, hey, we got to look at these facts, look at Biden's history, and he is not going to save us. He is the architect, or one of the architects, of mass incarceration. There you go. And CIA, he was the one who whipped. He was the head of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and whipped the Democrats to supporting Bush's war. Anyhow, I'll stop preaching.
So many receipts. Anywho, well, this is a good segue into the next question because we've already established that the Republican and the Democratic Party are united in terms of U.S. imperialism, are united in terms of like the exploiting African people. And so you are a member of the Green Party. And we want to talk about what is the Green Party's position on liberation of Africans in Africa from capitalism and imperialism, and what role do you see as an African man the party playing in that?
Well, you know, policy-wise, in terms of like our platform, it's pretty good. Organizational-wise, we have a long way to go. And you know, I mean, I'm here. I'm not here to, you know, BS anybody. I think one great thing, and I think there's been some. One of the reasons why I joined is because I saw because of radicals were being shut out who wanted to critique the Democratic Party were being shut out even by radicals and unions and what have you. The Greens actually did move towards, did open up even more political space in that direction in recent years. And that's why I did join, because I could see that. And I could also see the fact that Bernie, despite influence a lot of folks, I knew ultimately he would also create this resurgence in, instead of like direct action or like organizing, like towards like really electoral based, even if people are doing other stuff, electoral based kind of like focus. And by that, I don't mean like running, but like for really thinking you're going to change the system, and you're going to, you're really going to change the Democratic Party. If we try really, really, really hard, right? And so, that's important. But I think it's very important that Black Alliance for Peace and Black Agenda Report have had influence with the Greens. At a recent event, people said they saw your event last week. So that they on green capitalism. So people are listening to us, and that's why it's so important that we bring this message out. So we where we can improve upon is like we need to have more of a program, which would require a little bit more, I think, centralization. Now, like part of what I think would have saved us is that there is some decentralization things that came out of, I guess, anarcho green movements or what have you, that has influenced some of our some of the Green Party policy, and that's often been negative. But one thing is that no foreign entity could come in like just like completely take over the leadership and or I want to say, I don't mean foreign, I just mean like non-green, either Democrats or whatever, could just take over the party, and or like if someone goes like a certain direction, like if they start going right, the whole party wouldn't move right. So that's an interesting kind of contradiction, but because of that, we haven't developed what I think enough of a program, and that's what we're trying to do here in North Carolina. So every state, we're a federation, and people don't really quite understand that. But but it's important to note, like every state party is a little different, and I think most of our state parties are becoming more explicitly anti-capitalist, or say they're eco-socialists. Most of the parties have been against imperial incursions into, anywhere. But I think there needs to be more of a focus on AFRICOM. I think there needs to be more of a focus on like, okay, so if we're going to have this Green New Deal, who's going to be making the stuff, right? Where are we getting these resources from? Lithium mines, how, and so, I do agree. I'm an internationalist, so I don't, I say if a Pan-African movement were to unite nations, revolutionary. I mean, true revolutionary nations. I don't mean like OPEC, because like if you don't have an explicitly socialist program, you're gonna be like OPEC. It's just like an African version of that, and at best. And so but like I think there's ways that Black and Brown or exploited nations can come together and say, look, we're not going to give you your stuff until we get you. This is a we thing, right? So I think there's ways that could, I'm certainly not opposed to that. I'm for that. I just don't know how any of this is going to play out. Some interesting things happening in South Africa, in Egypt, and it's a very difficult struggle. But I do think probably even before the United States, we will see some serious revolutionary activity there. Brazil, where there's this amazing diversity that people don't know about. Bahia is just like I've been to Africa several times, and was born, in Africa, and just the closest to Africa I've ever been. It's just amazing. So, and I've heard people talking about revolution at, like at the clubs. Like, I mean, it's just amazing that I was like, wow, like, I mean, that's something you don't hear here much. But so I think that we have a ways to go. And part of it is like, if folks like you don't necessarily have to, like, you might focus on your own cadre, but if you can try to influence like the national committee, join that, like just vote a certain way, or have, I think that would really help to bring us to, I think, a stronger program. If there, I don't see a whole lot of organizations doing better though, like in terms of like some may have a better program, but still get, I think a problem with the left is that we're putting the cart before horse a lot in terms of like, not say wanting the perfect, but like trying to have the discussions. We need to form alliances, like Black Alliance for Peace. Like, that's why I like the word alliance, like the meeting we had for Berta, and form political alliances that we can have these debates. But right now we're just like debating online in this echo chamber, right? It's just like the people who may be gravitating to us are, if we came together, sort of like if more of these trade unions came together and like supported Amazon, maybe, I don't know if say they would have beat Amazon yet, but they probably would have had a bigger impact. And so it's a similar thing. So we're independent, we're interdependent with like the rest of folks who are waking up to the Democrats, and y'all have to like, I think also like Greens and Socialists working together in Left Unity. It was so wonderful to see Angela Walker saying the things she was saying. I don't know if you heard anything she was saying. She was really speaking some truth, and she's not a big electoralist, but it was so important to hear her out there, and for younger Black and brown folks especially, but working folks to hear people like that. So yeah, that's my perspective. Like we're good on some imperialist issues, like on paper, but now we got to go to that, education, agitation. We have to put that more. We have to have more of a program, I think.
Yeah, alliances and coalitions help to create that mass movement to disrupt the system. And then it also allows us to like cohesively build critical consciousness and wake people up. So the more and more we don't want to miss those opportunities. We've talked about this in APRP, how Trump was a little bit of a missed opportunity, because now people are going back to sleep, because the Democrat Biden administration is now in office and they're going to take care of, I don't know who, but they're not taking care of us. But the thought of it, right? The thought that's been brainwashed into us about what the Democratic Party does versus what they really do. So thinking about last week, Onyesabu dropped so much knowledge. I learned myself more about what actually green economy means and does not mean. And so could you talk a little bit about the Green Party's Green New Deal and why we need an anti-imperialistic approach to fighting climate change?
Great. Well, the Green New Deal has gone through, I'm sorry. I was going to look at some of this, but it's okay. The Green New Deal that, the Green Party was really, I mean, people have mentioned it before, but really the Green New Deal, as we have seen different versions of it, really watered down, go through going through the Democrats. That started with the Global Grains Task Force, but really it was in its current. The Global Greens is like a alliance of different grain parties, and however, some of them have different. I would say that the U.S. Greens are, especially in terms of like NATO, are really like one of the best. Because I think because we are so shut out, kind of like the civil rights era, we're so shut out from like being brought into, that flow of money or whatever, that like we have a more strong like base, anti-NATO base. But that began with Howie Hawkins and later on Joel Stein. Howie Hawkins ran for governor in well, he wasn't running for governor in I can't remember what he was running for in 2009, 2010, but that's when he first introduced the Green New Deal in New York. And then he also ran in 2014. So he might have been running for governor then too. I should know should know all of these facts, but so he was the first prominent candidate to run on a Green New Deal. And what the Green New Deal is about, one important factor of it is it calls for public socialization of energy. So that's I wouldn't have joined the Greens had that not been on the platform, because we can't be subsidizing the people who are the polluters. Like, I mean, to do something that it's just never gonna. They're always gonna. We're just rewarding them, number one, but number two is they're always gonna do something that's not in our interest, and their motive is profit. So we have to socialize that production, and and we're calling for worker controlled enterprises that are part of this. So that's a wonderful aspect of it. And in its current version, Howie took it even further than Jill's version on some levels, and started talking about, like, we got to look at the rest of industry, right? Because like 100 corporations are creating 71% of the greenhouse gases. Carbon dioxide levels, the parts per million, were like just 20 years, not even, I think back in the 90s were in the upper 300s, and now they've gone now to like in the teens of the 400s. I mean, that's just amazing rise. They've rise 2 parts per million or more, even though everybody was home. So in all these rich nations and even China and what have you, you had clear skies. People were largely not driving because of the pandemic. That it didn't budge, and that's because we have to look at greater production. We also look at the U.S. military and call for at least a 50% reduction. I think Howie was saying 70% or more than that of from the military budget, and that's extremely important because the U.S. military is, in terms of an institution, the world's greatest polluter. So it's and I think Howie was talking about more of like a global Green New Deal, because really this has to be a planned economy. It can't be, we can't do this and be nice to the people who are killing us. Like we have to take control, worker control, and we have to also look at the fact that we can't just be extracting resources from the global south and not and just allow them to not be developed the way that they should be. So there needs to be a lot. The only way you can really do this, and Cuba is a perfect example, right? Because I don't know if Onye was talking about Cuba, but they dealt with an amazing economic crisis, way deeper than anything we've had to face since the Great Depression, maybe even worse, right? And so they had a special when the Soviet Union, on top of a blockade, they which they lost a lot of their trade. Um, Cuba went through a special period. They went past it, and they're some of the leaders in terms of organic farming, finding ways to keep to not just destroy the soil, the earth that you have, because they're in an island, right? They can't, they have to do sustainable farming, otherwise, which takes more effort. And if like there's so many people in the world who are either unemployed or underemployed, and the rest of us are working too many hours. You have to have economic planning. You cannot do this in an exploitative system, because what you could do is like it'd be actually amazing, really. People who are struggling musicians who are talented artists, maybe they spend 10 hours a week working something like in an eco-socialist economy, and then the government could subsidize them to play at schools, to play. You just imagine if you just had free music everywhere you go, and you had these, it'd be a totally different society. People base everything upon, what brand you have. We've been so, and it just creates all of this redundancy of production and unnecessary things, that people throwing away stuff. And we could have people in jobs actually making sure that we can use some of these things. You don't, but right now, none of that's profitable. So it has to be an eco-socialist Green New Deal.
And we have someone in the comments just strongly agreeing with everything you're saying. Comrade Hassan, who was just on the show. They say, yep, Global South and everywhere else are not sacrifice zones to abolish and destroy these systems that only extract the life from our community. Absolutely. Global Green New Deal. I don't even understand how any approach to climate change that was like limited within like just the United States could have even worked. Like I actually have a comrade in Public Action Alliance, Julia, who explained how carbon credits work to me. It's so stupid. Like they literally will like plant like steal lands and plant trees in the global south country in order to like keep burning coal somewhere in the United States. And they're like, oh, we just cancel each other out because we planted these trees across. And it makes no sense because we're all on the same planet.
Exactly. And the perfect example is the imperialist reaction to the COVID crisis, right? You have India, which is one of the biggest vaccine manufacturers in the world, and they didn't organize their production to serve their own people until you have this, and it's because capitalism forces them to look at what's the most it's what's the most profitable way to produce this? Where's the market we can get the most money? I mean, so that's a perfect example. But then again, like we can't like pretend this is an airborne illness. So any kind of like, especially where there's a major outbreak, any kind of variant that might be resistant to our current vaccine is going to come back. Like you can't stop. I mean, it's in the air. So, I mean, that's a perfect example of how the madness of like thinking that we can do this all compartmentalized, and there's no way. The only we're going to have to save um, ourselves globally, and and there's going to need to be more resistance, like we've seen in India. There's a mass strike, and I think this has broken that up. I think that's going to really push forward more struggle. I think also in Brazil, people are really seeing how they will let us perish if we don't stand up.
Absolutely will. Absolutely will. I feel like that's a very good segue into our last question, which is why is it necessary that organizations like the Green
Right on. I think I mentioned some of that. The most important being that um, the political space that you get from you don't have the political space unless you really want a short career as a politician in the Democratic Party to critique the Democratic Party. I mean, you see like with AOC, she's already saying, Biden's doing a great job. It's just like, you don't, you don't, and you won't find even left Democrats, talking about Julian Assange, talking about independent journalism. Like, as horrific as some of the people were, I mean, the white supremacy and everything on January 6th, you find people who are like applauding Facebook and Twitter just shutting down like their political enemies. I'm just like, well, guess what? Guess who's in control of that? Not us. So it's a question of power. So you enjoying, you say, oh, well, it's great that these people in power are just like shutting down people they don't like. Who are they going to use that against, right? We had folks like Margaret Flowers and Kevin Zeese, the late great Kevin Zeese, who had joined major delegations to Venezuela, where they were election observers. There are also the embassy, the defense action that was really amazing. The Venezuelan embassy that they held down the fort for, I guess it was like over a month. I can't remember, but it was a long time. So much was happening at the same time. So we have to, look beyond the Democratic Party. I'm going to share something real quick with you, and that's if I can, I gotta open this up real quick. Okay, share screen. And this is, I know some of y'all have been talking about Haiti, so old Haitian proverb. Stephanie McMillan, who's a wonderful political artist. And so, like, the unity of the chicken and the roach or the worm or what have you happens in the belly of the chicken. And so what that means is just like, you cannot, you're not going to unify with, you're not going to get stuff, change the empire from the inside if you don't have, you have nowhere near the amount of power. I just wanted to show you a picture of Bruce Dixon, who was the former editor of Black Agenda Report, who passed away, another giant. He passed away in 2019. Very good friend, one of the few people I really say is a mentor, because every time I spoke with him, it's like we could disagree on something, but Bruce always made me look at something a different way. And that picture actually over here is of, he was an OG Fred Hampton Black Black Panther Party member, and that's him when he was like 17 or 18 in the documentary The Murder of Fred Hampton. So he's seen the struggle. He was also part of the Rainbow Coalition with Jesse Jackson. So he's seen the Democratic Party from the inside. So he says an authentic left must be independent. This is actually from Black Agenda Report. What would an authentic 21st century left look like? Check out the article. I'll give you the link to share. But an authentic left must be independent of Republicans and Democrats. We've talked about that already. An authentic left must be independent from corporate and church philanthropy. So it doesn't mean that some of these things aren't good, morally, but we can't be beholden to donors, the donor class. It has to be, a left has to be powered by the people and, our resources, more importantly, also our labor and time that we have, whatever time we have available. An authentic U.S. left has to be unconditionally opposed to empire. And, you have the Democrats who are, almost unanimously, approving the same military spending of Trump. So like Trump's like, what, he's Cheeto Hitler, right? But we're going to give him, we're going to give Cheeto Hitler, almost $1 trillion to spend on war, so that they knew that Trump didn't have control of the military. Otherwise, they wouldn't have, they knew he didn't have the institutional control levers that, he could have. An authentic U.S. left must deploy solidarity as the antidote to white supremacy. And Minneapolis was a perfect example, right? Because it's like close to 20% African origin folks, but we needed other folks coming together in solidarity and outrage over what happened to George Floyd. And so we can't, it's important that we do have differences, but it's important to know where we have to come together, because we're not going to win this in a race war. That's my opinion. I mean, because like not in the United States, because they're really, we're outgunned that way. But like, but we can win this. ideologically, and I think we have one ideological struggle in many ways. Like amazingly, half the people interviewed in Newsweek supported the third precinct fire. That I did not expect in America. 2020. But it was just very interesting. And now 71% of people, I think, agreed with the verdict in the Chauvin, or that he should have been found guilty. That's something that's a change, but that had to happen through um, some sort of solidarity. An authentic left must incorporate a class-conscious opposition to capitalism. So we've been talking about that in the great Fred Hampton quote, like, we're not going to win, we're not going to beat capitalism by its own game. That the system that enslaved us, we're not we're not going to beat it at its own game, because its origins, how it works, comes out of, like, if you study Marx, it's, dialectically, historically, like, the origins of one system come out of the previous one. And so that's where we are. You're not going to undo that with some, you're not going to have, like, Wakanda. I'm sorry, we're not gonna have like, Wakanda being the center of empire for, but it's just nice visuals. But that authentic U.S. left must have to create spaces for traditions for discussion and debate, like we have right now. We have to also, like, this is a sort of a debate, but we do have to, at some point, especially during a mass movement, create spaces that pre-vision the kind of society we want. We can't create all of those things without production changing, but we can, try to be the people, the kind of society we want. And an authentic 21st century left must give birth to a revolutionary party of the working classes. That's where I haven't totally read y'all's program, but I just thought it was just a wonderful. The article goes more in depth and makes some good critiques of the Greens and other orgs, but I think it's just it encapsulated where we're at right now.
Right, and I found that article and share the link out. Black Agenda Report is definitely a media outlet that I deeply respect. It's actually how my impression of the Greens for most of my life was that it was like racist hippies. But then I came across Bruce Dixon and Ajamu Baraka and all of these like revolutionary African people, militant revolutionary African people who were in the Green Party, who were using that space to create a platform for themselves. And I was like, well, clearly I have to pay attention to this. But yeah, and you're another person who I deeply respect. Like, we are friends on Facebook, and every so often you drop like bombs.
Margaret Kimberly too. I don't want to leave her
out.
Margaret
Kimberly, absolutely, yeah.
She might watch this.
But yeah, there's lots of revolutionary African people in the Green Party doing the work, y'all. So definitely worthy of respect. We thank you so much for joining us and for your thoughts today. Thank you
for this opportunity, and let's maybe join our study, and when we go through that Che book, or we can talk about something else another time, and we'll have you on something.
Awesome.
Talk about that.
We're down.
Yeah.
We're down. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
have
Tony.
Have a great rest of your day. Thank you, Tony.
Thank you.
Thank you, Onyesawu, for closing out the show. We'll see you soon.
Of course. Let me pin myself. Wrap this up. Woo. All right. Hello, everybody. So that was our guest, Tony Ndege from the Green Party. Thank you so much, Comrade, for dropping knowledge today and sharing your perspective on that organization and what folks should know about it. We appreciate you. So now we're just going to go on to a couple more things before we wrap up the show. First, we want to talk about what's going on here in Tiwa territory with the All African People's Revolutionary Party's work. As folks know, we talked about on the show a couple of times, we are starting a Pan-African community garden at the corner of Avenida Cesar Chavez and Arno Street in the South Broadway neighborhood, the historically African South Broadway neighborhood here in Tiwa territory in Albuquerque. So we have been out there for 3 Sundays with members of our community, with drills, with gloves, with shovels, with saws at some points, and we have been beautifying that lot. We spread down a layer of mulch. We began building raised beds, and we went into it not even knowing how to do it, and we built like 8 of those bad boys. We have also started working with the Southwest Organizing Project Youth Group in order to build a shade structure on the lot. We have gotten donations and hookups of soil and manure. We got plans in place for a pallet fence. The fence is not going to be to keep the community out of the lot. The fence is simply because the garden is like next to a very busy street. And so we want to make sure there's like some kind of barrier so that we can have like kids at the garden without being right next to traffic with nothing between. So we're going to build like a pallet fence. It's going to be really nice. And we're currently soliciting donations of pallets to build that fence. We've never built a fence before, but I bet you we can organize and figure it out. So those are the next things that are happening. And in addition to doing this great work to beautify this lot, to build this garden from the ground up with the community, with African, Indigenous, Chicano comrades, European working class comrades who have come through. In addition to doing all of this solidarity work, we are also engaging in political education on that land, y'all. We have been learning about green imperialism. We've been learning about why a green economy in the United States is going to be built on the back of exploiting Africa and the global South. We've learned about how imperialism intentionally attacks food sovereignty in African nations and African communities around the world in order to keep us oppressed and exploited. So as we've been building this garden from the ground up, we've also been engaging in revolutionary political education, connecting the APRP strategy, connecting our struggle to build revolution to the work that we're doing here on this land. So it's been really incredible, and we deeply appreciate all the folks that have come out. It's been like over 50 people that have come out at various times to help us do that have helped us dig dirt from secret locations to bring to the garden, that have helped us pick up mulch, that have helped us pick up pallets. We're actually going to get more pallets today. So thank y'all so much for all the folks who have contributed thus far to help the garden become so beautiful already, and we are so excited for what the rest of the summer is going to bring. I can't wait till the plants are like this big and we're in there sitting and having meetings and like events. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be amazing. So we've been out there every Sunday thus far. This coming Sunday, we're taking a break. It's Mother's Day. There's several mothers in APRP New Mexico, so we want to give them that day. And also, we are waiting for the water to get turned on. We located where the utility lines are, but we need the water authority to give us access to it with a pipe so we can set up the water system. So we're waiting for that to happen. And then once the water is set up, we can get to planted seeds and start, y'all. But meanwhile, we will be out there Sunday afternoon digging holes for the shade structure. Our comrade Rodrigo from SWAP gave us like this thing. It's called like a post hole digger. I've never used it. Pretty excited to see how it works. But it's just a way of digging a really deep hole. So so there's not going to be a build day on Sunday. There'll just be a couple of us out there digging holes. That should be cool. So stay tuned for when the next build day will be happening. It'll be after the water is set up when we start planting those seeds, and also building the fence. I'm actually very excited to build the fence. I feel like knowing how to build a fence is a useful skill. And we are also working on developing a political education curriculum for the PE work that we do at the garden, so that we can continue connecting the issues of food sovereignty, continue connecting the issues of imperialism, continue connecting the issues of needing a global Green New Deal to our work at the Pan-African Community Garden. Also, if you search for Pan-African Community Garden, Albuquerque on Google Maps, it comes up now. And I just find that cool. I just find it cool. Anyway, so that's the update on the community garden. Coming along quite nicely. It looks very beautiful. If you live in that neighborhood, go ahead and check out the beds that we built, all filled with the soil, the mulch that's laid down. Quite gorgeous. Other things that New Mexico chapter is doing, we have our elder care program. Every single Saturday afternoon for over a year, we have been delivering groceries, medical supplies, masks, and political education to elders in Tiwa territory. We do this every single Saturday afternoon. We currently have a delivery of due deliveries to 10 elders. So if you know of an elder in Tiwa territory, particularly an African elder who could use such a service, especially because the pandemic is not over, it's actually still going. People are still getting sick every day. People are still dying every day in the United States. It's not over. So if you know of an elder who still needs to stay home, who is better off not having to go to the supermarket, not having to venture out and risk catching COVID during a pandemic, then we can bring groceries to their door. Just hit us up at aprpnewmexico@gmail.com or give us a call or a text at 505-295-0008, and we'll get them added to our delivery route, and we'll bring them groceries and reading every single week. Actually, there was one African elder who was with the program from the very beginning, who was like getting the APRP propaganda. She joined, so she's in the APRP now. That's Afro Phoenix. And then the second one took an African name. Now he's Kwame from just engaging with us and reading about Pan-Africanism every week. So well, not only are we feeding elders, not only are we giving them massive medicine, but we're also engaging them in our work and engaging them in political education. And some of them are joining the movement, which I think is amazing. So please hit us up. Hit us up if you know any elders that might appreciate some support like that. Again, aprpnewmexico@gmail.com or 505-295-0008. Other things. So that's New Mexico chapter updates. What's going on with APRP International? Well, it is almost African Liberation Day. It is African Liberation Day season. The only holidays that I celebrate are Halloween, May Day, African Liberation Day, and 4th of July. Halloween, May Day, African Liberation Day, 4th of July. African Liberation Day is my favorite holiday. It is a day when revolutionary Pan-African organizations all around the world, in Africa, in Europe, in the United States, in Canada, in Central and South America, put together commemorations of our struggle for liberation. There's always speakers, there's always music, there's always bamboo, there's always just building and community. It's just such a beautiful day. And so this year, the APRP is organizing an online webinar where we're going to have speakers from all over the world talking about ALD, talking about why we need to unite as African people. The theme this year, I believe, is uniting to liberate Africa. So we are hosting an online webinar on Tuesday, May 25th. I am killing time while I look up the flyer that I should have had ready so that I can tell y'all all about it. But basically, ALD is a day to learn about the struggle for Pan-Africanism, to get on-the-ground updates from organizations that are on the front lines of building Pan-Africanism for our people. It is a day to celebrate our history. It is a day to learn. It is a day to come together. It is by far the best holiday, by far. So yeah, tune in for ALD. Actually, at the end of the program, we have a little slideshow that has the ALD flyer. So I'm just going to defer to that so I don't take up more time trying to find what I was trying to find. But again, that's Tuesday, May 25th. And the flyer that we're going to show at the end of the program has the link to register. Please register. Please tune into that webinar and learn more about how we are actively building Pan-Africanism all around the world. Also, as we mentioned last time, this is just one of several podcasts put on by members of the All African People's Revolutionary Party. At this point, there's a whole network of APRP podcasts, y'all. So there's us, Weekly Pan-African News. There's the Pantsula podcast by the Kaji Work Study Circle that is posted every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern. There is Ajamu and Shakur's weekly program on Sundays at 5 p.m. Mountain Time, and they're currently doing an Organizing 101 series. You constantly hear us saying join an organization, but you might be like, what if I want to make my own? I've never done that before. How do I do that? All you have to do is watch Ajamu's series. It's literally from the ground up. How do you build an organization step by step by step? This coming Sunday, they're talking about step 3, which I believe is how to build a program. But we're going to share the flyer for that as well. And again, that is Ajamu with his daughter Shakura, both members of the PRP, every Sunday at 5 p.m. Mountain Time with their own program. Also, Comrade Mzuri, a revolutionary African woman and cadre in the California chapter of the APRP, specifically Southern California, has the Revolutionary African Woman Show with our comrade Halimatu, also in California. They have Revolutionary African Women cadre in the APRP on their program. Last time they had Mjiba the goat, Mjiba the genius, living in the Ghana chapter, building the APRP. Can you tell I respect her a lot? I'm building the APRP in Ghana, talking about the legacy of Kwame Nkrumah. The Revolutionary African Woman podcast is posted on Saturdays, and you can check it out on the Revolutionary African Women Facebook page. And lastly, there's the Forward Ever podcast on Spotify, also hosted by members of the All African People's Revolutionary Party, specifically members of the social media team. You might have noticed, in the past few months, all of a sudden the APRP social media was on point. We had our own graphics. We had a color scheme that was defined. We had selected fonts that we had to use. All of a sudden, it was much more polished. The people that run the Forward Ever podcast are part of the team that did that. So shout out to those comrades for bringing us into the 21st century with the social media and making it so on point, so good. Check out the Forward Ever podcast. It is on Spotify, so you can search for it right now and listen today. So let's move on to the closing. We can wrap this up. Also, I see Comrade Ramiro. Hi, Comrade. He says, great stream. I look forward to these every Thursday. Long live our revolutionary African sisters and brothers. That comrade is formerly of Anti-Conquista. That comrade makes really incredible revolutionary anti-imperialist content that you can check out on his YouTube channel. Check out, if you're on YouTube, click Ramiro's name to see his channel. You can see the content he makes. But we want to thank y'all so much for joining us, for tuning into the show every single Thursday at 12 p.m. Mountain Time. We do this every week. It's been over a year. The other day I checked, it's been 58 episodes. 58 episodes of this show we have done. And so we could not have done it without y'all support, without y'all sharing the show, without y'all commenting, without y'all telling folks about it. We have a comrade that like shows it to their family, to their grandparents on the res. Like, we appreciate you. We appreciate the folks that tune in and that tell folks to watch, for helping us grow our platform and for helping us just like share revolutionary Pan-Africanism with as many people as possible. Y'all are dope. So my name is Onisanmu. This is Weekly Pan-African News presented by the All African People's Revolutionary Party, New Mexico. Tune in next week for the next episode of the show, Thursday at 12 p.m. Mountain Time. Also, it's Thursday, which means there's new articles on hoodcommunist.org. The APRP is part of the Revolutionary African Coalition that produces the Hood Communist blog. Hood Communist features all African writers speaking about African revolution, and there are new posts on hoodcommunist.org every single Thursday. They are up right now. Go read them. Hoodcommunist.org. Once again, if you are not active in the organization, you can hear me speaking right now. I encourage you, I exhort you to join an organization fighting for justice. Join an organization fighting for your people. It doesn't have to be the APRP. If you're like, these people are too militant and I'm scared, then join another organization fighting for justice. Join a more mellow organization. If the organization you want to see doesn't exist, then build that organization. If you don't know how to build an organization, then watch a Jamu show this Sunday at 5 p.m. Mountain Time. It's going to give you step-by-step instructions, y'all. But understand, we are fighting the most organized enemy humanity has ever faced in this capitalist imperialist system. And in order to take out an organized enemy, you yourself must be organized. The only way that we're going to defeat capitalism for good and build a system based on life, build a system where African and indigenous people are free, is if we are organized to build that system. So please join an organization fighting for justice. If the organization you want to see does not exist, build that organization, y'all. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day. Stay tuned for some promos.
Hey, Atom, reloaded. Atom, reloaded. Junior, ha, Yawa Crum, Yawa Crum, Rasta Fuwa Crum, Rasta Fuwa Crum, Yawa Crum, Harrock Fuwa Crum, Harrock Fuwa Crum, Yawa Crum, Fresh Watch, Fresh Girls, Fresh Watch, Fresh Girls, Yawa Crum, Where Mami, I'm Shafe, I'm Kwajalami, Yawa Crum. Rasta Fuwa Crum, Rasta Fuwa Crum, Yawa Crum, Harrock Fuwa Crum, Harrock Fuwa Crum, Yawa Crum, Fresh Watch, Fresh Girls, Fresh Watch, Fresh Girls, Yawa Crum, Where Mami, I'm Shafe, I'm Kwajalami, Yawa Crum, Niwa Crum, Ashawata, so the Ayan Shimbom, the Jimani, Magunko, the Lions Den, Chata Boom, don't try me Tribom, Harrock Fuwa, if you're in some mampom, yes, you give a money in the back, to cash it, I got them before, no be property, even near your intimate sympathy. Manum Pisha, Pasho, Nanatachi, Alomo, Casapraco, and the dry daddy. Yawo Crum, Bisakubabu, and Netaju, Tudo, Untimate, Yamugu, Yadis Capudo, Sanjabi to Su, the blessing, and let you Yawo Crum, Rasta Fuwa Crum, Rasta Fuwa Crum, Yawo Crum, Harrock Fuwa Crum, Harrock Fuwa Crum, Yawo Crum, Fresh Watch, Fresh Girls, Fresh Watch, Fresh Girls, Yawo Crum, Where Mami, I'm Shafe, I'm Kwajalami, Yawo Crum. Rasta Fuwa Crum, Rasta Fuwa Crum, Yawa Crum,